forgot the grade I wanted.
No, I know who you are. Sometimes like, because I'm going to ask about the proposal.
Got it.
No, actually, but that's not including the right. Yeah, so we feel that. I'm curious. They did. In mine alone was like 5. Yeah. I was like, yeah. Yeah, it's really what happened? Oh, went down. It feels like I'm so right now. I think really that'd be great. And let's start with Angela. You've got an announcement for everyone.
I wish I had a flyer, but I don't. So this Friday, we're having, so my job here at the university is I'm the program director for prescription drug abuse research grant, and office is over there, so those who have visited. But we host grand rounds events once a month that are focused on public health topics that overlap with prescription drug abuse in this region, which I don't know if you're aware of sort of some of the statistics of Northeast Tennessee in particular. So this Friday, in this room at noon to 1, you can bring your lunch. We're going to have a guest speaker from the Regional Health Office talking about neonatal abstinence syndrome. So that's babies born dependent on drugs, not drug addicted, but drug dependent. And the etiology of neonatal abstinence syndrome. And all the little terms that we hear in this class are in the objectives of the presentation. So you'll see flyers coming up. I wanted to get her photo approved by her. I honestly, my brain was supposed to advertise this a week ago, and I thought it
So
was next Friday.
this Friday, okay, in 2 days.
So it would mean the world to me, please, if any of you could be there. I'm doing it late. And we'll have them every month over the next year related to prescription drug abuse, and they'll be better advertised. But you'll be getting an email later today, and there'll be flyers.
The speaker is
Cynthia Thomas. Sorry, Dr.
Okay, she's a great presenter. You'll learn a lot. Thank you, Angela. Okay, here we are. Everyone, you made it. You made it through the exam. The exam scores are skewed a little bit to the left. Okay, and so that you may be concerned a little bit about that. And so what does it mean when something is skewed to the left?
Negative.
Oh, don't say negative. And so it was the entire class that was skewed to the left. Okay, so we'll make sure that the class gets back over to a normal distribution. There were some comments about what is written in the syllabus about the grades, okay? A priori, before we even know how many students are in the class, who's taking the class, we need to post a syllabus in terms of what is going to be included in your final grade, okay? And so characteristics of individuals that are in the class cannot be incorporated into that formula. And so as you've learned, there are a lot of opportunities, different activities to participate that are announced through D2L. Please take advantage of those activities because they are placed there to help individuals that have different learning styles to succeed in this course. And as I said, I'm trying to make sure that everyone succeeds in this course. If you have a particular concern, please contact me. I'll speak with you. We'll figure out how to make you feel good about yourself. That is one thing that I don't want anyone to feel after they've taken an exam or they've submitted an exercise is for it to be a negative experience. Another reason why our exams for this course are in that format is the majority of individuals taking Epi 1 go on to taking their comps, their MPH comps. The MPH comps are in that format. And so folks need to have the experience of taking multiple choice, true-false questions in an environment where you sit in front of a computer and express your knowledge that way. I was having a conversation with one of your colleagues this morning. I understand it is not a natural environment. That's not how you interact with your colleagues, with other professionals on a day-to-day basis. And you have a store of knowledge in your mind, and it's not like folks are communicating with you, say, true, false, A, B, or C. So yeah, I understand the stresses that you may be thinking that you're going under, and please use your communication skills and tools to speak with any of the instructors that you come across while you're in your program. It's very important to set up that line of communication as necessary. It may not be necessary, but that's there and available for you. Okay, so in question.
Sorry, I just have a question
please.
about,
yes.
So exams are 80 and exercises are 20, but I noticed there are discussion boards.
That's correct.
And those are not graded.
They're not graded.
Okay, so that's not part of the 20%. exercises 1 through 4.
That's correct. That's correct. That's correct. Okay. Any other administrative issues, technical issues, any problems with D2L that specific to this course? Were you all able to access your exam? Okay. As noted in one of the news posts, the specific answers to a set of questions in which you were doing calculations for is not on there because they're not true for all, multiple choice. I'm going to try to get those to you by the end of this Friday, so you'll have that information that you can compare your work to. You can rethink how you approached those questions. There are, and the reason for that, there are a few students that had some emergency issues that made them need to reschedule their exams. Okay. Also yesterday, exercise 3 was posted. Exercise 3 is very different from what you've done thus far. You started with a case report. Exercise 2 was an article critique, and so we are trying to, I'm trying to vary the type of exercises available to you. These are a set of questions similar to what you might find on an exam. Open book, use anything that you think you need to assist you to respond to the questions within exercise 3. And please keep that document as a Word document. When you submit a PDF and I transfer it to a Word document, I just don't want to have that thought go through my mind, is everything transferring correctly. So just submit a Word document through D2L, and so you can pick up and drop off exercise 3 through D2L. If you are ever having a problem with D2L in terms of submitting your work, you can also submit it to me directly to my email, and only use that if you really need to use that route, because for some reason on either end D2L is not working. But don't ever let that interfere with your timely submission of those exercises. And exercise 3 is have a due date of November 17th. So, okay. In terms of epidemiology in the news, does anybody else have any news items for us or any questions? Yes.
I saw that there was a Shigella outbreak in San Jose.
Okay.
With, I think it was a Mexican restaurant, and I think there, last time I saw there were 40 people.
Holy, oh wow, wow, wow! That's quite a
I
number.
don't know anything else. I just saw it.
Okay. Hopefully, morbidity, any mortality, case fatality.
I don't think so far, but this was a few days ago, so I haven't checked since.
Okay, and so how did they direct their investigation, or why did they direct their investigation to that restaurant?
I'm not. I just know the kind of the overview of it, but I thought it was interesting.
Okay. And it reminded you of this class, so that's good.
Yeah.
Right. Eating in restaurants and getting sick. Right. Go ahead.
I read about a trial, non-randomized trial.
Okay.
In the UK, concerning the use of Viagra. Viagra that is used in erectile dysfunction, used in intrauterine fetal growth restriction in a fetus that is not growing well. So they give to them, and yeah, I think. So,
what were your thoughts of it being non-randomized?
Yeah, according to what I saw it like, they have to definitely, you have to select based on patients that are having this seizure, because 18 between pregnant women from 18 to like 30, 35 years. So they select them. When they have this complaint, fetus has to grow, at a particular rate. When it's not growing, so they put them to the side. They give them these drugs, and they are positive because.
Okay. And so, observational trial based on physician's decision as to whether or not to use the drug?
Okay.
But anyway, good. You folks are keeping your eyes out.
I heard something this morning about them changing the age for mammograms.
Yes.
Where there's some debate about whether or not that's appropriate and for whom and what the reason is behind why they're changing the age.
Right, and so why
after all these years?
after all these years? Go ahead, why after all these
And
years?
they're even saying that women don't even need regular breast exams from their doctors on an annual basis. Where is this coming from?
Okay.
Studies.
Yes, exactly.
They did a ton of analysis on all these different studies that say that only high-risk women need to get them earlier, but the women's discretion should be taken into consideration. And a lot of doctors are still going to do it at 40 and still going to recommend it. But that could be but that could pose an issue with insurance covering it because they're going to probably go with the American Cancer Society and not cover it unless you're 50 to 55.
Good point in terms of sort of bringing in the other disciplines in terms of how this new information can affect other decisions, affect us in terms of co-payments that we may pay. But what happens over time? Things change. There's new technology, and there's additional information to review and make these panel decisions.
I was just going to say, I heard that they kind of started changing the guidelines because they looked and the false positives were, the negatives with that were outweighing the benefits of screening women earlier. That's kind of what we had talked about.
Exactly. So what does that mean in this case here?
Okay. So the sensitivity of the test was low. Is that right? They were getting.
Keep going. Keep going. Everybody either nod or shake your head.
So the specificity was high. Right? Okay.
That sound good?
They were getting a lot of false positives, or I don't know if it was a lot, but that was their issue. It was not good. That specificity. Yeah.
And just from a practical standpoint, because we were being taught this as the rules were being changed, so the U.S. Preventative Task Force, which is the overarching group that determines the guidelines that physicians should follow. But there's also the Association for OB/GYNs, and those are also another set of people who are actually, administering the mammograms and doing the breast exams. But they have a different guideline, so they're still going by the 40. There are different guidelines that people are going by, but the U.S. Preventative Task Force, they provide the overarching guideline. And the reason is because mammograms is the most, specific sensitive for women who are older because their breast tissue has a different composition. Young women, their breast tissue is more dense, and so you're going to get a lot of false positives from mammograms. And so that's why the measures are changing until more information is known.
Okay, good. So hopefully you can use some of the principles and concepts that you're learning through this course to help you not only critique the scientific literature, but critique what you hear on the radio, what you read in newspapers, however you receive information that helps you to have informed conversations with your healthcare providers, informed conversations with policymakers, individuals in government. So this is great, and I'm glad that you're beginning to critique disinformation, as I keep saying, critique, thinking about the strengths and weaknesses of the information that's provided to you. Is it appropriate? The way that it's being presented, is it appropriate? There's always jokes about how data are presented. They can be presented in a way that can support anyone's judgment or feeling about a certain issue. So we must always question things, and now we've got some specific tools that allow us to question and justify our responses. In the whole caveat of just because something is published or it's in the news or it's in a scientific journal doesn't mean that it is correct, appropriate, even if it's in the peer-reviewed literature. Things are missed. So I think you'll also begin to see some additional information, stories popping up in the news about the nuclear meltdown, the Fukushima nuclear meltdowns. There was actually a different story in New York Times this morning that was describing a case in occupational health and some of the workers that were helping to clean up the disaster after it occurred, and specifically beginning to look at lung cancer rates among those workers that were at the site. And here we have a really long-term cohort study in which, following the children after a natural disaster, but after a disaster, there's often medical monitoring that is set up because countries, industries are worried about legal ramifications after something like this happens. And so these children here are having, what are they? Specifically, ultrasound checkups since March 2011. And when you begin making very precise observations on a population, one of the things that you do have to be aware of is you're going to start maybe counting more than you may have in the past because you're using a much more specific test and picking up cases, and so your comparisons and in this case against historical information, you need to adjust for that new methodology that's being used. Another similar example is after the hurricanes along the Gulf Coast in the United States. Katrina in New Orleans area, there were, as FEMA was coming in and providing homes, they were trailers, and some of the trailers in terms of manufacture have potentially a higher chance of being exposed to formaldehyde, and so there were, I believe it was directed by the CDC, had put out requests for applications for study designs of how best to do the monitoring of children, those children that were moved to trailer homes, and to see if there was an increase, particularly in respiratory symptoms, diseases, illness. But very common to see irregular medical observations after large disasters. Okay, so as you now begin to go through the second half of the textbook, Gordis, you'll see that we are now going to continue to use the terms, the concepts, the formulas that we learned in the first half of the book, and add a little layer of sophistication about thinking about, okay, we know what an incidence rate is, we know what an odds ratio is, we know what a relative risk is. How do we apply it? How can it help us to answer research questions? How do we incorporate it into a study design? And so during the two chapters, 11 and 12, primarily centered on how best to gather data, how best to use data to answer the question about associations between an exposure and a disease or an outcome, whatever that may be. So we focus on 3 types of risk for this week, and those are the absolute risk differences, and relative risk. Now, what is a term that can be used interchangeably with risk? Incident. Right, correct. So risk, incidence. If I want to talk about risk, I need to have incidence. What type of a study design do I need to perform to get an incidence? Cohort study. Cohort study allows us to calculate an incidence because a cohort study is a design that goes over time, whether it's a week, a month, a year, years, because we need to incorporate that concept of time into an incident. So an incident rate, risk of disease. Absolute risk is just its name. Absolute risk, it's incidence in a population. Incidence alone, don't have to do anything with incidence to get absolute risk. It's whatever you calculate in the population as incidence. So it provides us with a piece of information. It provides us with an important piece of information. We always want to know, okay, what's the incidence of coronary heart disease in the U.S. population in the 1990s? What is the incidence of coronary heart disease in the U.S. population in 2015? Important piece of information to know. However, it doesn't tell us whether or not what might be associated with that risk. And so now, in order to investigate potential risk factors, and that's a common term that we use for variables independent variables that are included in studies or investigations. They can be exposures, such as exposure to activity, exposure to high-fat diets, exposures to sodium, or they could be characteristics, gender, age. All of those independent variables can be referred to as potential risk factors. And to determine if one of those potential risk factors is associated with an outcome, a disease, a disability, a syndrome, we need to collect data that we can use to compare exposed populations versus non-exposed populations, okay? We're still measuring incidence of disease or absolute risk, but now it's absolute risk in an exposed population versus absolute risk in a non-exposed population. Having those two pieces of information, we can now begin to think about association. We can ask ourselves, do males have a different risk or incidence of coronary heart disease versus females? And we can provide that information as a risk difference. So risk in the exposed minus the risk in the non-exposed, and then that will give you a figure of risk differences, and then you can make a statement that the risk or the incidence in the exposed is higher than the risk in the non-exposed. Or you can calculate a relative risk. And so your relative risk is relative to what? Relative to the exposed or relative to the non-exposed. Risk is calculated by the incidence in your exposed population divided by incidence in non-exposed population. Now, you've already answered this question. What epidemiologic study design is used to determine risk of a disease? We stated cohort study. Cohort study could either be the prospective or the retrospective cohort study. And what type of study subjects does one begin with for a cohort study? Non-disease study population, because we're trying to calculate the incidence or the risk of the outcome over time. And so just a few additional points on absolute risk and the fact that absolute risk cannot provide information on association. It doesn't provide you any information as whether or not that absolute risk is higher or lower or even to, there's no comparison, okay? And so testing associations are based on comparisons. And so we often call it a comparison population. It can be called a control population, but we just need something to compare it to. And this is one of the basic activities for epidemiology, is to determine or investigate potential causal associations. So we are learning about different tools that allow us to investigate, explain potential causal associations. This is all based on making comparisons. But we don't want you to throw out absolute risk because it does have a function or a purpose of its own. So here is one of the review questions that was at the end of chapter 11. So let's say that you're taking an exam, and this is one of the questions. Think about your best approach to finding the answer to this question. My suggestion is you start with your 2x2 table. This 2x2 table is such a helpful tool for epidemiology and helps you organize the data so that you can come up with an answer. Even if it's a matter of knowing, okay, this number goes in the numerator, this number goes in the denominator, and if you didn't go any further than that, you still got that response correct, just as long as you know, you've got the concept, you know, all right, here's the numerator, here's the denominator. And another important aspect about this 2x2 table is what's the label at the top and what's the label on the side. Because when we start discussing the matched case control study, this 2x2 table changes. Okay, and I remember when we the first, maybe the first or second class we had earlier this semester, and everyone was trying to turn tables and sort of like, well, does it go this way? Does it go that way? The orientation of a table is very important, and how it's labeled is very important also. So, but right now, we're talking about, we're looking at a follow-up period, a cohort study, and we need to calculate the relative risk for benign thyroid tumors. And so we've got the formula for relative risk here. We've got risk in the exposed over the risk in the non-exposed, and this formula is never going to change. That's the operational definition of relative risk. Risk in the exposed over the risk in the non-exposed. And so as you have your 2x2 table in front of you, what's in the A box? I have heard 24. Okay. What's the question?
Are you talking about cancers or just
okay. Calculate the relative risk for benign thyroid tumors. Okay, so we have cancer of the thyroid developed in 24 and a benign thyroid tumor developed in 52. Calculate the relative risk for benign thyroid tumors. What's in box A? 52. Okay. And so how many individuals were exposed? 2,872. Okay. You find that in your first sentence. 2,872 persons who received radiation treatment. That's the exposure. Okay. what's in box C? 6. Okay. So you've got how many are diseased? 52 plus 6. Okay. Your A plus B under your diseased yes column. So what is the risk in exposed? What's the numerator for the numerator of the relative risk? 52 over 2872. Okay, so you've got 52 over 2872, which is A over A plus B, right? What's the denominator of the relative risk? Okay. So read the questions carefully, figure out where the numbers lie. You're usually going to, sometimes you might just get a marginal number, and then you might get A. So remember, you subtract in order to fill in your boxes. But fill in all your boxes before you answer the question, okay? It's helpful to do that first, so that you understand where all the numbers go, and once you fill in this box and you have all your marginals, you can calculate a relative risk. You can calculate an odds ratio also. How would you? Let's say this was a case control study. How would you calculate an odds ratio? Your cross product, A times C divided by B times C, okay? And as long as your 2 by 2 is set up this way, with disease on top and exposure to the sides, you can calculate relative risk and odds ratio. Here's your cross product for odds ratio. So what type of epidemiologic study design incorporates the odds ratio? Case control. Case control, you cannot calculate a relative risk with odds case control study. You don't have the component of time. But there's that very confusing section in Chapter 11 when you read, I think it's in Chapter 11, when you read it the first time about how your odds ratio can approximate a relative risk, right? And that is actually a very sophisticated concept in epidemiology. And a topic for great discussion. But as we first begin to learn about it, first begin to communicate that concept, there are 3 conditions that we look at in terms of our case control study to determine whether or not it would be appropriate to say that our odds ratio estimated a relative risk, okay? That's when the cases are representative. Well, we want to make sure if we are designing a robust case control study, we always want our cases to be representative, okay? So, should be that. We want the controls to be representative, and, you know, another design component of a case control study. Cases should be representative, controls should be representative, And the third item is that the disease should be rare. Well, that's kind of when you use the case control study is for rare occurrences. So I know it's a difficult concept to think about. And so at this point, memorize those three items that should be true for when an odds ratio can estimate a relative risk. But at this point, we don't need to go further than that in terms of that concept. I just wanted to remind you that that concept is in Gordis, and for those of you that wish to learn more about that concept, there is an appendix, I think it's Appendix A, Chapter 11, that provides you with the mathematical theory behind the odds ratio in its relationship with relative risk. So we also learned about the matched pairs case control study. Matching is commonly used in a case control study, and that's when you have your cases and you match a control to a case on a certain characteristic, whether it be gender, age, or anything. You can match on anything. The goal is not to match on too many variables, because then you don't gain any more power by going over about 4 variables to match. But remember, study designs are recipes. You need to follow the recipe to get a decent tasting cake in the end. And as you step through the design of a study, you need to make sure you start with a research question. Then you determine the most appropriate study design to match with that research question, or that will allow you to answer that research question. You've got a study design, and then there are appropriate methods associated with the study design, and then there are appropriate ways to collect and present data, all associated with the study design. There are methods of analysis that also match to the study design. And so this really is the concept that we're trying to get across here, is if you use matching in your design, you need to use an analysis that corresponds to matching. And it would not be appropriate in a matched design to calculate the cross-product odds ratio. And so here, you'll notice that the 2x2 table no longer looks like the 2x2 table that we had a few slides ago. Here we had the important label of diseased and exposed, and with the matched design, we now have control and case. Now, what happened to disease?
They're all diseased.
All the cases. All the cases represent disease. Okay, so now we have control at the top, exposed, unexposed, and cases over to the side, exposed and unexposed. And here we also learned that there are 4 situations in which matched cases and controls can land into the 2x2 table. Both the case and control can be exposed. The case can be exposed, but the control is not. The case is not exposed, but the control is. Both the case and the control are unexposed. Okay. So if you are, you have a question in front of you that states in a matched pairs case control design, the first thing you want to do is build your 2x2 table. Okay, on your piece of paper, build your 2x2 table. Because then life gets easier. You don't have to do a cross product. All you have to do is show, okay, B divided by C. That's going to be your odds ratio. So these are the 5 items in Chapter 11 that you need to focus on. Define an absolute risk. And what is an absolute risk? Yep, plain old incidence. It's incidence. Incidence risk, we use it interchangeably. Relative risk and odds ratios are measures of association between an exposure and a disease. And why can they be a measure of association? You're making a comparison. Yes, yes. You remember, just cannot have the incidence. You need an incidence in 2 or more populations. The reason why I say 2 or more, sometimes individuals are looking at not only whether or not there's exposure or not exposure, but there may be a continuum of exposure that we're interested in, often termed a dose response. If you are exposed for more years than, or for 5 years versus 1 year, does your risk increase with the amount of time that you've been exposed? So Chapter 11 also brings you back to calculating and interpreting a relative risk. We've done that previously. We've calculated a relative risk. We know that it means the incidence in the exposed divided by the incidence in the non-exposed. And then in terms of interpreting a relative risk, we think about your relative risk is a number, it's a 1.5, it's 2.7, it's a 0.3, it's a 1. And so think about, okay, if it's greater than 1, what does it mean? If it's 1, what does it mean? If it's less than 1, what does it mean? And we're only talking about relative risks right now. We haven't even entered the concept of confidence intervals. But you folks already know about confidence intervals. Same thing, calculate and interpret an odds ratio. You use the same standards for an odds ratio as a relative risk. It all centers around 1. 1, no risk. Above 1, you're beginning to potentially see risk. Below 1, your exposure may actually be a protective factor. And then having the ability to calculate an odds ratio in a matched pairs case control study. Okay, so let's put those concepts to work, and let's calculate. We have a 20-year study of alcohol drinking and liver cancer. What type of study design would you think that is? Cohort, yeah, 20. Whenever you see that, you've got a follow-up study, a study that includes multiple years. So a 20-year follow-up study, a cohort study of alcohol drinking and liver cancer was conducted. What's the exposure? Alcohol drinking, liver cancer being the disease, was conducted in 10,000 people. You have a total study population of 10,000. 1995, okay. The researchers determined at the beginning of the study that 6,000 of those people drank alcohol regularly. So draw a 2x2 table. What's the label going to be at the top of the 2x2 table? You've got disease at the top, and you have exposure on the left side. And where are you going to place that 6,000? Okay, and is that 6,000 A, B, C, or D? A plus B. It's right. It's a marginal total. It's everyone that is exposed. So exposure, yes. A plus B. Your 6,000 goes over there. Of these alcohol drinkers, 700 developed liver cancer. Where does the 700 go? A. Correct. Excellent. Let's see. Among the non-drinkers are what? Non-exposed, right. 120 developed liver cancer. Where does that 120 go? C. Correct. So do you have enough information to calculate a relative risk? Okay, good. And just in terms of, all right, so what's in the numerator of a relative risk? Okay, yep. Your numerator of your relative risk will be A over A plus B, or 700 over 6,000. And you might want to conventionally multiply that by 1,000. And then the denominator, you have non-exposed, 120 over 4,000. Once again, calculated by 1,000. And your relative risk is going to come up somewhere around 3.9. Okay, good deal. All right. Let's do another calculation. Matched pair case control study. All right. Draw your 2x2 table. What's that? What's the label at the top of the 2x2 table? Controls. Okay. Controls, yes and no. And then on the left of the 2x2 table are your cases, yes and no. All right, so the investigators identified 7 pairs in which both the case and control were exposed. What box is that? A. 10 pairs in which neither, neither the case nor the control was exposed. That's box D. Very good. 5 pairs in which the case was exposed, but the control was not exposed. B. And 3 pairs in which the control was exposed, but the case was not exposed. C. Okay. You've got an odds ratio. You've got what pairs do you use, or what boxes do you use for matched pairs odds ratio? B over C. 5 over 3, you've got about a 1.7 of an odds ratio. Okay, so get in the habit of drawing your 2x2 table first, fill it in, and figure out what's in the numerator, what's in the denominator. Yes?
I tried to figure this out since we left the last slide. Could you go back
Certainly.
to the previous one
Previous slide.
and help me figure out where we got 4,000?
Okay, yes. We had, okay, we know that the total population is 10,000. Okay? And we know that, so we're working with the marginals right now. We know that the study included 10,000 people. And we get information that 6,000 drank alcohol regularly. Okay, so if you are looking at your 2x2 table, you have exposure on the left, okay, and then you have yes and no. And so your marginal for your yes exposure is 6,000.
So A is 700, and B is 6,000 minus 700.
Correct. So that's 5,300.
Right.
Okay.
And then I have the
And then
C is 120.
Correct. But go over to your, this is when you have to use your marginal. Your entire table should add up to 10,000 study subjects. Okay. So you have 6,000 exposed. And so how many would you have that were not exposed?
4,000, and then it's 4,000 minus 120 for D.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes, yes, yes. Good, good, good. Yep. So that's why you want to try to fill in your 2x2 table. And you will have all the information. Sometimes you don't need all the information. For example, if you were just asked for the incidence in the exposed, you wouldn't use information in the lower half of the 2x2 table, but let me stop talking there. Okay, all right. Okay, so do you think Chapter 11 is under control? Okay. There are some additional questions at the end of Chapter 11. Remember to go through those questions. They help. They help. And if your answer does not match the back of the book, ask a colleague, ask Yang, ask me. We will provide you with information so that you understand why your response doesn't match the response in the back of the book, or you may found a typo or misinformation at the back of the book. Okay. So now a new topic in Chapter 11 was introduced and titled Estimating the Potential for Prevention. And we're going to now think about some other 2x2 tables and the concept of attributable risk, which I think is a extremely important concept for public health. You can really sell your prevention program if you can begin to discuss attributable risk and say, gosh, if we deployed this program into this community and it's centered around smoking cessation and 80% of lung cancer can be attributed to smoking, just think about all the money that we can save your community in terms of medical care and medical bills and insurance rates. And so this is an extremely important concept. How much of the disease that occurs can be attributed to a certain exposure, whatever that exposure may be. And, you know, we continually go back to that 2x2 table. How much of the risk or the incidence of disease can we prevent if we're able to eliminate exposure to the agent in question? Or how much of the lung cancer risk experienced by smokers can be attributed to smoking? And with data that we collect from populations, we can begin to put numbers to these questions. And so we have methods for calculating the attributable risk. Attributable risk for the exposed group is one concept that we can discuss, or we can discuss the attributable risk for the total population. Okay, so there's two types of attributable risks. Another place where you can stop and say, is this question about attributable risk for just the exposed group, or is it for the entire population? So get that, first understand that, reread the question, make sure that you're providing the correct, or thinking about the correct formula. There is a general concept that there is a background risk of a disease or an outcome that exists in a population for both exposed and non-exposed. Okay, as we all know, individuals that are not exposed to cigarette smoking can also be diagnosed with lung cancer. All right, so there's just this background of disease that permeates the population that you're looking for. So a concept to keep in your mind. So you have the incidence of a disease that is attributable to the exposure in the exposed group. Once again, you've got a new formula. You've got your incidence in the exposed group minus the incidence in the non-exposed group. Okay. Once you make that calculation, then what you're left with is the incidence that is attributable to the exposure. Okay. It is it's a risk difference. Okay, right? Remember, a risk difference, we're taking an incidence in one group and subtracting incidence from another group. It's a risk difference. This risk difference is now providing us with incidence of a disease that's attributable to the exposure in the exposed group. Yes?
Just have a question about background risk.
Mm-hmm.
When they're assessing what that is, are they looking at the population as a whole? They're not looking at an individual and saying, here's your genetic makeup or here's your family history, so your risk personally is higher. So this is population.
That's a great question. Yes, yes. The concepts that we review in epidemiology are population-based. The information can be used by healthcare providers to think about the specific characteristics of an individual that may place them at a higher risk, but that's not what we do as epidemiologists. So yes, in terms of an answer to your question, it's at the background risk of the population.
So the background risk would be like people who get lung cancer who've never smoked. That's how
Correct.
they calculate what that is, and then people just know that's the difference. Okay.
Yep, you always
Okay.
have that risk in the general population. And so what proportion of the risk in exposed persons is due to the exposure? You've got now a different question. Okay. Here's question 1. These are the 2 questions that you have to differentiate. And this is where you could get, under time pressure, you could potentially read incorrectly. Here are the 2 questions. The incidence of a disease that is attributable to the exposure in the exposed group versus what proportion of the risk in exposed persons is due to the exposure. Okay, so proportion, whenever you have a proportion, you need a ratio, percentage, proportion, ratio, percentage. And so you've got that your risk difference here divided by incidence in the exposed, and that will give you the proportion versus just the difference. Okay, so two concepts, and that's how they differ. And how does this help us with prevention? Relative risk is a measure of the strength of association and possibility of a causal relationship, where attributable risk indicates potential for prevention if exposure is eliminated. So attributable risk being a tool used by health departments. Relative risk being a tool primarily used in disease outcome investigation, scientific investigation. And so, okay, thus far we've just been talking about the exposed group, attributable risk associated with exposure. Now we want to think about the entire population, and that is your population attributable risk, okay? And so if you see just the term attributable risk being used, most often it is referring to the exposed population only, and that you are going to have the population included in the phrase when you're considering the entire population. And so, similar question, what proportion of the risk in the total population is due to the exposure? Proportion, percentage, ratio, you want to set up your formula as a ratio. And so, similar to what you did for the exposed, when you're concerned only about the exposed group, but now you've got the incidence or the risk in the population minus the incidence in the non-exposed. You get that difference and then divide it by the incidence in the population. So you see how all of those data begin to cancel each other out, and that background is taken out, and you have a calculation that results in the proportion of risk in the total population that's due to the exposure. So let's get back to calculating these concepts. So we have another 20-year study, a longitudinal cohort study, a follow-up study, and we are investigating smoking as the exposure in coronary heart disease. And we've got 2,000 smokers of which 65 develop coronary heart disease. And so with that, we've got enough information to calculate what? Just by using the 65 and the 2,000, what can we calculate? Incidence. Yes, incidence in the exposed. And same thing for the non-exposed, we've got 4,000 and 20 developing the outcome. And so what is the incidence of coronary heart disease in smokers that can be attributed to smoking? What would you do to answer that question? Correct. You are calculating basically the risk difference, and you have the incidence of the smokers, and then you want to take out the incidence in the non-smokers. It's kind of taking out that background disease occurrence, and so whatever you get, you can now attribute to smoking. And so if you're using 1,000 as a base for your incidence, you've got about 27.5 or so. Now, what do you need to answer the next question? What is the proportion of the total incidence of coronary heart disease in smokers that is attributable to smoking?
The incidence in smokers minus incidence in smokers divided by incidence in smokers.
That's correct. And so we heard that in order to determine the proportion of the total incidence of coronary heart disease in smokers that is attributable to smoking, you have incidence in your exposed or incidence in the smokers minus incidence in the non-smokers. For your numerator, you divide that by your incidence in your smokers. Okay, so that's the ratio that you need to create, then calculate, and then you can learn the proportion. So with attributable risk, you can calculate two different types of attributable risk for just the exposed population or for the total population. You've got attributable risk, population attributable risk, PAR, you see PAR used. Here is another calculation. We have a cohort study, longitudinal study, drinking and throat cancer. Here we've got the incidence of throat cancer among drinkers was 9 over 1,000. Incidence among the non-drinkers, 1 over 1,000. And from another source, we know that 45% of the total population were drinkers. Okay, so take a few minutes. This has a different piece of information that needs to be used to be able to answer the two questions at the bottom. So work on that a few minutes. Oops. Sorry. little guys in the way. Use your books if necessary. What piece of information don't we have that we need to calculate? Total population. Correct, correct. We do not have information within the text of the incidence of the disease in the total population, and we need that piece of information to be able to answer those two questions. And so, does anyone have a suggestion how to calculate the incidence in the total population?
Suppose the population, take a random number, like 1,000 or something.
Okay, there's a suggestion. I think you're going back to thinking about indirect adjustment using a standard population. Good suggestion, but I'm going to direct you to the piece of information that we do have. Go ahead, Ms.
This is not a full thought yet, but
yes.
I was thinking, out of 1,000 people, 450 of those would be drinkers. So you could calculate the non-drinkers out of 1,000 and then fill in the table.
Right, correct. The concept is correct. The approach is correct. But we just go ahead and we know that 45% of the total population were drinkers, so 55% are non-drinkers.
Right.
Yes, that is the approach. And so you've got the incidence in the non-drinker, the incidence in the drinkers, the 9 over 1,000. Multiply that by 45%. You've got the 1 over 1,000, multiply that by 55%. Add them together. That's your total population.
What number, did you get at the end of this calculation?
For the proportion of risk in the total population?
No, the first one?
3.6.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so what did you do to get the 3.6?
Took the total population and subtracted the incidence in the non-drinkers.
Mm-hmm. 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 And then, okay, is everyone, are your calculations for the first question, are you getting 3.6? Is anyone not getting 3.6?
Can you just say how you did it again?
Okay.
Because I didn't get 3.6, I did it a different way.
Okay, okay. Let's review what's needed to answer this question.
Okay.
For population attributable risk, you need to know the incidence in the for the total population. Okay. We are not provided the incidence in the total population with these words. Okay. We are given pieces. We've got incidence among the non-drinkers and incidence among the drinkers. But we don't know the population yet. But we do know that 45% of the population were drinkers. So now we know that 55% of the population were non-drinkers. Okay? So if we've got the incidence for the non-drinkers and we know what percent of the population they are, we've got the incidence of the drinkers and what percent of the population they are. If we add that together, we've got the total population, the incidence in the total population. So what was the, what did you do to calculate the incidence in the total population? Back to your response. You were, Kathleen, you were the one that.
To calculate the
Yes.
incidence in the total population?
Mm-hmm.
So just the first part of it.
Just the very first part. Yeah.
You take the incidence in the drinkers and multiply it by the percentage of the total population that are drinkers. And you also take the incidence in non-drinkers and multiply it by the 55% that weren't drinkers, and you add those two together.
Mm-hmm.
So 4 points. So that gives you the first part.
Yes. Gives you
That's
4.
not the answer.
Right. That's 4.6, but that's not the answer. There's one more step.
So you have to take that number, 4.6, and subtract from it the incidence on non-drinkers.
Mm-hmm. So that's where you get your 3.6.
Which is the answer to the first bullet.
So incidence of non-drinkers. This is one.
So the 3.6 is the incidence of throat cancer attributable to drinking. Okay, so you've got your full population, you subtract out the incidence of the non-drinkers, and then you get your incidence of throat cancer attributable to drinking.
You don't have to. Can you write it? Can you write it on the board?
And for those that are watching this by WebEx, we will put this so that you can see. Yes.
So you're with me. I don't think she's still on right. And you get the 1.0. You got me? So this is the incidence in the total population. So it's the same thing as 4.6 over 1,000. So that's for your first part. And then, so it's in the book, but it's the incidence in the total population minus, which, okay, so 4.6 minus the incidence in the non-drinkers, which was 1 out of 1,000, which gives you the 3.6. Yeah.
So the 4.6 say again, why?
Yes, that's just the same. That's this rewritten. Okay. So yeah, it's like 4.6. Yeah.
So what does this actually mean? That like 3.6 what? Your chances of getting cancer?
No, it's that incidence in a population is attributable to drinking.
So that's with the bar graphs, this is the difference.
Yes, right. That's the incidence in that population of throat cancer attributable to drinking.
So can you say that we eliminate alcohol, people will have 3.6 times less chance?
Not chance. The incidence will be reduced by that amount.
So do you remember from our last exam, it said you have 3.6 times the likelihood of drinking. So
right, but right.
How would you say this in words? 3.6 what?
The incidence of throat cancer would be 3.6 per 1,000. In we are looking at drinkers.
But this is the difference between the total population exposed and unexposed minus the unexposed.
Right. We've gotten the background out of there, and so this is the incidence attributed to drinking.
Okay. I'm sorry, this is confusing because we have the incidence of drinkers, and it's not this number.
Right, but it's not for the total population.
Which includes exposed and non-exposed.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. That's correct. We do, right, yeah.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Sorry, it was about how I did it, which is not how this was done. And I didn't get the right answer, so it's obviously not right. Can you point out to me how mine was wrong? So the sample that we were given was out of 1,000. And so if I was thinking, okay, so 9 were that were exposed. 9 were exposed at cancer, 1 were exposed. I just added 9 and 1 over 1,000.
Right, but what you were missing was the percentage of drinkers in the total population. You were not using that piece of information. All we know is that we had the incidence of drinking was 9 per 1,000. I'm sorry. In the drinkers, the incidence of throat cancer was 9 per 1,000. But remember, you've got a population, and you need to know what percentage of the population has the exposure. Okay? So if the percentage of drinkers in a total population was 65%, you're going to get a different answer. It depends on the distribution of the exposure within a population. if your exposure is rare in a population, it's most likely not feasible or cost efficient to do a prevention program if the percent of your exposure is very small.
Okay.
Okay, because for the total population, a very small number could be attributed to that exposure because there's just not a lot of those individuals that are running around with that exposure. Okay, so this is related to your question also, Melissa, in terms of the distribution of the exposure factor. We've got set numbers. We have that 9 per 1,000 can mean very different in another population that has a much less percentage of individuals that have the exposure.
So this is more valuable probably than incidence when you're talking about programming.
Exactly.
It's a better number to use.
Exactly. Attributable risk is very powerful for public health intervention, explaining programs, and one slide that we had in terms of, yes, that's it exactly. It's not saying that one is better than another, but there are different uses for these pieces of information. And yes. Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't think I had anything else. Any other questions about today's topic? Were there other items that you marked down for yourself that you wanted expanded information on? You've been sitting there for a long time, so it's now a break, and I will round up Yang so that she can begin to distribute computers to those that need it, and you have the second Epi-Info exercise. And I'll be right back. I just looking at it right now. Yeah, it doesn't yeah, I bought it. There I get it wrong. There's a lot of
So Carol, how about the EHR that should be incorporation?
You had a question? I go home with it. I think my body will be okay.
I might have to.
Yeah. I did it like completely like a different way. Okay, but no. I got we don't know the same thing, but yeah, she's I was thinking I'll see. We've seen this morning. Yeah. I have a lot right now.
Yeah. Now, you're not actually.
And like I remember I went on a tour of their lab, and so if someone catches something in the hospital, and you know how you have to do a lot of testing to specimen to figure out what it is. It's the PhD that do that, not the MD. The MD do like I can do like something. Have more time in the lab.
Just do actual book someone.
One year you do you could have a family, but if you do have labs, it just depends on the form. Yeah, because some are more making the infection lifestyle, and so he is in control of the infection and making sure it's under control of the hospital. So that's how they get their infection. But if you want to be in the lab, then that'll be on the patient lab. But if you want to be in the hospital, then maybe a little bit more, not a lot, and empty a lot.
After you get your IP info, I hope you already see the data and the instruction in the D2L. Please download the data in the D2L. I think I can start with today's access for the IP info. Today I will introduce the data analysis by the IP info. If someone uses IP info 7 or the previous version before, you may know how to use the classical. But for the classical data analysis, you need to know some programming, some code to write a code to the data analysis. So I want to talk more about the code. So today we just use the dashboard. You don't need to know any code. All of them just manual. You just can click any menu and any button, then you can do analysis. I will use some example to introduce how to do data analysis by IP info. Before you do analysis, you need to know your data. What your data is, what is this data for, and what variable you have. So maybe you can start to, I will use one example. This example already contains the IP info. I will show the data for firstly, you can see, when you go to IP info in the project folder, you can see several examples this IP info already contains. I will use this equal to introduce some data analysis. Firstly, let us to look at what this questionnaire look like. This questionnaire is also for the football outbreak investigation. This is a very typical questionnaire. Most questionnaires such as this include the demographic information such as name, age, gender, race, contact information, and clinical information include the symptoms. What was the patient need? This question is very important because use this question you can identify this participation is case or control. And this also includes some symptoms onset date. We always use this variable to develop the IP curve. If you want that IP curve, this is very important. And this is symptoms.
I hope someone still remember last time I intro how to design the questionnaire. I encourage you to create the group to include all the symptoms together. When you do analysis, you can analyze all the symptoms together. But for this questionnaire, they didn't do that. Each symptoms are individually. But when you do analysis, you only can such as look at the frequency one by one. But I will talk about how to solve this problem later. And you can see these other symptoms include the other clinical information. For the second page, this is for the exposure, food eaten, food history. They use the groups. So when you do analysis, you can analyze all these food together. You don't need analysis one by one. And the last part is lab test. This is typical questionnaire as I said before. Most time we include the demographic, clinical information, and the risk factor exposure, I mean. What else you need to look at for this questionnaire is from the tool. You can see the data dictionary. Yeah, from here, you can find the prompt. This is shown in your questionnaire, such as you can see some question, was this patient ill? But this name is this column is show the variable name. So for this questionnaire, the variable name is ill. So when you do analysis, you know if you select ill, it means your analysis this patient is ill or not. So this two column is very important. Another important column is this variable type. From this, you can know this data is categorical data or continuous data. In order to, you can know you will do such as calculate the mean, t-test, or you need to such as look at the frequency for the categorical data. So after we learn what it is about this questionnaire, we can start to do some analysis. Let me close this. Click this. You will see this window. This is first step is import your data. Here, set data source. Here you can import any format of data. You can see not only just IP info. You also can import such as Access, Excel, SQL, and other else type of data for the IP info to do analysis. We use this one. After you set up your data source, you see this window, and right now just right click, you can see this menu include all kinds of data analysis you can do. I want to talk about this export data. Sometimes you collect the data by IP info, but you want analysis in other software. This time you may want to export your data. This is very good, such as output format. You can transfer your current data to the Access, Excel, SQL, and other format of data. And the connection information, it means you have to have a file. What type of file you want to? For example, if you want to transfer this IP info data to the Excel, you should create it such as empty Excel file firstly. Then you connect your Excel file with this one. And the destination table, it means you know when you created the Excel file, you may have sheet 1, sheet 2, or sheet 3. You need to determine which sheet you want to put this data to. Then this is what is there. And you can export all these variables or only select several variables you want to export. I also can sort variables by type order or not. So if you want to export, this is a good function. And you also can look at the data dictionary. I encourage to keep this open when you do a data analysis, because sometimes you will maybe not remember which data, such as data variable name or the question name, and want to match a type of data. This is the field name is this promote. This I said is showing the questionnaire. You can see different questions for this, and yeah, this is variable name. Fourth column is variable name. And most analysis in this part, you can see, you can do analysis for frequency, line list, combined frequency, 2x2 table, means, and a lot of charts, different charts. And also do some regression, linear regression, logistic regression. And this function useful when you already have some table down, such as if you already have some 2x2 table, after click, look, you can enter the your data and get the odds ratio, chi-square, and anything else. I never used this function before, but if you wanted, you may find some very interesting information for this part. Look, different standards, different reference. And for this part, you can add some image, or you can add some text box. If you want text some title or some explanation for your data analysis, you can do that. So we can start to do analysis one by one. Look at, we can see the frequency firstly. Frequency, we may look at the number of this data. Firstly, we can look at how many cases, how many controls, and how many total participation for this data. So we can still look at how this before yield. This is determine this case is patient or is just control. So use this variable. You can click here. You can see all the variable names here and find which variable you want to analysis. We want to analysis for yield. After run, you can get this one. Yes, it is means this is case. No, it's control. So you can see this data total have more than 300 participation. About 276 cases, 183 are control, and you also can see the frequency. And when you have this, you also can export this table to Excel. You just right-click, send the data to Excel. Then you can get this one. Besides we can try the mean. Means we can look at the age. We can see there is the variable name is age. Just click age. But we may want to see the age difference in the case group and control group. We can click the stratify by the yield. So you can see the mean of the yield group, the mean age of yield group is 36 years old. The mean of years of the mean of age of the control group is 16 and 36. But I think most of you also take the Bell one, right? So I think you already learned what is this t-test and ANOVA. Okay, I can show how to do analysis. ANOVA, so you can just see the t-test from here. Age, advanced option. Here, you may not click stratify, click from, look at from here. Cause the tablet by you. Then you can raise some statistical analysis, t-test, t-value, and the p-value. When you learn ANOVA, you also can look at some statistical ANOVA and other statistics. This is for the continuous variables, Because this button you can make it small. Or extend this. Extend it. Okay, we also can, combined frequency. This is I talked before. I talked before that for this questionnaire, they didn't make group for the symptoms. So when you do frequency, you just can look at such as frequency, the abdominal cramp. You only can see this one sentence, right? So here you need to make a new variable from here. I think you can hear new variable. Click here and create the variable group. And symptom group. And click what symptoms you want to put in this group. Click this one and enter this control. The blood area. Oh yes, maybe. Oh yes. So right now you have a new variable. It's called the symptoms group. Click here from the combined frequency group field. Symptoms group. Here, then you can see the frequency for all the symptoms you want added. You don't need to do the frequency for each symptom one by one. It's much easier. Yeah, we can see, do some charts. Column chart. Look at the gender. When you click the advanced, you can weight it or select stratify. We also can stratify by year. You can get this one. If you want more information for this, you also can click here and click display option. Show the legend name, or anything else. If you want to add title, others you want to add it. You can get this one, or change the color, change the format of this. You also can get from this graph. Pie chart is often as also can stratify or just from the advanced. Pie chart for the year group or control group. Yeah, you also can make the IP curve. I told before that mostly use the data of onset to make the IP curve. Onset data. Then you can get the IP curve. if you want more, show more information, also can search from here. Advanced options, stratify, such as stratify by the gender. Male, female, in different states. Yes?
No, go ahead. We have the same question. On the column chart, how do you know, because it's in red and green, how do you know which is sick and which is not?
So,
We tried to like put labels on it, but it worked.
Yeah. Oh,
here.
how
It's
do you
in the
do
legend.
that?
Are you saying something like that?
Display option,
Okay.
legend, show the legend, show the variable name.
Okay, thank you.
Make this too. Then you can have the legend and know who is sick, who is not sick. It's as similar as in other charts. Yeah, last I want to talk about for the 2x2 table, because I will tell you how to get your odds ratio, relative risk, and other things. From here, you get this exposure. Yes, we need to go back to the data dictionary. Yeah, this variable. Put eaten, this is group variable. Group field. It contains all the food history for here. So this is as our exposure variable. Outcome variable is year. This is question determining this case is year or not. So exposure is food eaten. Outcome is year. Now first you can see the table. First column is all the exposure variable. Outcome rate exposure, outcome for no exposure, risk ratio, and odds ratio lower and upper limit. And then you can see the 2x2 table and some statistical analysis for each exposure variables. This 2x2 table, this you can see the odds ratio and also can see the p-value. And I think you already you need to determine through the p-value to determine this variable is significant or not significant related with this year or this disease, right? If this p-value smaller than 0.05, this would may significantly related with this outcome. So you need to look at all the p-values to determine which one is significant. This is footnote to table. All of them is together.
Yeah. What are the colored boxes showing
Here?
Yeah.
This means how percentage of each 2x2 table you can see. You can look at from here if you in the setting display option, percentage of total. They show a different color from the white to red. So this red, I think more than 18% for here from total cases. You can change if you want to change. I think you also can change the number, change the color. Yes, you can change the color. Even change the break to show this. Yeah, I think just it I want to introduce today. And next we may start for the access. We also use, I think everyone still remember our access one. We created a questionnaire for a salmonella outbreak. We want to conduct case control study, and I provided the data for you. If I can see this scenario collected in this case control study. This is introduction for state access. So you can find this data in D2L. So first step, I want you to import this data because I changed a lot for this data. So I transformed from the Epinfo format to Excel. So there is no group here. Everyone you want to do a group analysis, you need to conduct a new variable and a group variable to add all the variables you want to get together. I introduced before. Don't remember. It doesn't matter, you can ask later. Or I can show you here again. For here, look at new variable. Create a variable group. You can put such as if the food, all the food is not in the group. You can create such as food and select which food you want for the together. Then you will get a new variable. It's called grouping variable called food, and all the variables together. You can analyze this variable once, and all the food variable is in your analysis. So maybe we can review the questionnaire we used last time. So that you to recall the data.
So we're doing the exercise next week?
No, we're doing exercise right now.
Oh. All right.
This is a questionnaire I want you created last time. We also include demographics, clinical information, and the food history. So we include the name, gender, age, race. For the clinical information, if you this question was this case U, use the variable name is U to determine this is case or control, and the symptoms, 6 symptoms, and the food history. There are several foods, and all of them not in the group because I already transferred the data to Excel. So you need to get the new variable to make these variables in one group variable. So right now you can start get here and import your data, and the step to do analysis just to follow this instruction. I think I still give you maybe 20 minutes. If you have any questions, just wave your hand. I will come. It's okay? Yeah.
You have a hard time adding a group with like what I've done.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could show that again.
Okay. I can use what data we will analyze today.
Because I'm not getting the option to add a group. Even like I've already like put the data on here, like I'm already like doing some of the stuff that we're supposed to do, but it's not giving me the option to right click to add a group. So I don't know if I'm supposed to right click to add a group to get some done, or like to add a new variable.
Yes, because if you still use Epinfo format data, you don't need to do this step, because when you created this question, all of these symptoms are already in one group. But because I transfer the data for Excel, this group function is not here. So for today's data analysis, you need to create the new variable as group variable for symptoms. I can show you right now. You can see from here. New variable. Create a variable group. Sentence. And right now you can click this sentence. Abdominal pain. Diarrhea. Fever. And vomiting. And click OK. There will be a new variable. It's called sentence. All the sentences already together.
Did you right click on it? On this blank?
Pardon?
Did you just right click on the screen?
Yeah.
And then and then you have to go to where it says B, general, there should be Excel.
There's two Excel.
I just clicked the first one because okay. And then did you download it already? You should be able to find it in click on that.
Yeah. Open it.
So that it went through
Here's the control map.
Yeah, well, so, where it says in the bar store, I can't read. Yeah. But that, and here, okay. You're welcome. Right click. That one. And then start with this add analyst gadget or something. And that should start going through. There's a Word document on D2L that tells you what tells you.
It's on English. I think
you open the Excel tab and click Save As and Save As. Some grade, some 7 version, and you make
yeah, where did it go? The thing is going to the same. Thank you.
You're good.
Yeah.
just run that's the verbal.
I'm not sure I really remember. Now I'm hoping I figured it out.
And then I age.
I mean, I'm sure. I mean, but not necessarily.
Advanced options.
Yeah. And you did
How do we add a
The only one we get to try. It really makes it super hard.
Yeah, we Googled it and everything. We're like, what? Thank you. We had that. Yeah. Close this one.
Yeah. It's wonderful.
Okay, that's what we did, but we want to find T. Yeah, click it right away. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So I want it wasn't yeah. Oh, look at it. Yes, so that's what
You make me laugh.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
You can be there, right. Don't do that again. Yeah, I just want you to search for your value just this is not content and one that you to consider how to strategize your kind of function. From here, you will get who can track the strategy.
Higher SFPD. Like, you guys are gonna be hired. I can't see that.
Like, you're home. You're gonna be hired. Technology.
Yeah, you can hire us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that we don't want
It's really like what's the computer work?
This group is all of you not only one. So, and I
Making us do things I have to do. I can begin it. What else am I going to do? And then I have to review, make corrections. I'm going to put on the review committee for medical school.
What happiness is the?
They gave me really bad.
I wrote up.
Yeah, and it's Abdul interviewed me. He did. I didn't want to go because I didn't want to go to yeah, I think that was why. He wants for ortho surgery. That's really competitive. Speak a good mind about I think
Okay, and I should do it. I should do that. And she's doing so I don't even know. Okay,
everyone's doctor. And then like another we stay together. I was a year ahead of him, we were in the same year. And then all our studies were all pre-med. And then he was like, I'm pre-med too. But after, you know, I'm done with mine. A rapper hit. After he finishes that, real fun with you know, that's the biggest thing. People apply. They don't even have to apply like everything. Applications together is so terrible. And then some people start to say they don't know what to do. But as long as both of them But it was just like so many people trying to get in.
And so when it said 1 to 5 years, that's 5 years. Yeah,
I thought it would be a lot.
How many investigators?
Hello everyone, I hope you already finished your data analysis. I will show what I did before. I think everyone will have a similar result for me, such as frequency, output, age, and Hi, please pay attention. Hello? Please pay attention. I just need 7 minutes to finish this. I just want to show the data analysis result. You can see the frequency means also get p-test. This chart for the gender yield control. Pie chart. And the combined frequency for the symptoms. And the 2x2 table for each food item. I just want to ask, is anyone found any food may associated with its outbreak from the p-value? P-value? Is anyone found? Yes. You can see the p-value from here. So which one is smaller than 0.05? From my analysis, this one. Diet metals. This is significant. So we can see this is associated with this outbreak. And the odds ratio we can say is 1.8. So we can interpret if this patient, if this person eats the diced tomato, have a 1.8 risk to get this foodborne yield compared with other not eat this diced tomato. So this is just I want you to get your results to see which one may be related, which one maybe not. So but exactly for this real outbreak, we didn't find any food significantly related with outbreak. So finally, we just found several food handlers, EO food handlers still work during this outbreak. So we just get a conclusion they may be cross-contaminated by the EO food handler to the food flow caused this outbreak. This is a real outbreak happened last August. I also used this Epidemiology to collect data to do analysis. I can show some results for you. Look, this is epi curve we get. It's real epi curve. This blue shows the yield food handler, so we get this conclusion. And this is also made by the Epidemiology to generate the map to see whether this is case cluster. So I think that this is all of today's access. I hope it will be helpful for your study and your work. So thank you, everyone. Thank you. And when you return your laptop, just slide again.
Oh, yeah.
I like.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Literally last night I was back to my apartment. But they were talking about
How are you doing? I'm sorry. You have your book?
it was really fun. Like everything else was awesome. Yeah, I do.
Which edition?
Okay, I'm not for the new type.
If they're in the negative, like second year, one of their
One of those are really good. It's like you got school in Nigeria. Okay. Okay, I'll send you my favorite. And it was, I used it over 12 weeks. Next year? Okay, so yeah. Okay. Yeah. If you study, you have plenty of time. I studied this material over 12 weeks, and it was, I use a lot of books. So I use a lot of books. I will, I have it saved on my computer, my study guide. And I didn't do well. Well, I did okay in school, but I was like up and down. Like sometimes I would study really hard, and other times like I didn't study. But I knew for a step I had to do really well, and so I studied and I got 238. And so that's good. So I can, yeah. And Caesar. So, and I was really happy because I didn't study. I know a lot of people did. They were surprised by how I watched it. So I will let you know.
I didn't find it so
I will let you know the books that I use. I think I still have most of them. I know a few other people want to use my books. So I'll send you the link. I'll send you an email so I can send it to you. Or I'll give you my email and you email me because I will email you.
And you also try to value. You pick file 1 last, also pick file 1, you know if the p-value is smaller than 0.05, it is significantly.
But my schedule is more condensed. So the biggest thing we'll look at is to
ratio and p-value.
Go study for study. Where you can do practice questions. Did you have you?
I don't. Okay. And then I was thinking also sorry a bit.
Yes. Do it. Yes.
Because I saw some. You want to like the info one.
Euro the year is set. So that's how if you do Euro questions, that's exactly how it's set up. So it'll prepare you the most. The only thing you need to do is just probably go to another to a quiet area, but then a whole like how the screen looks, it looks just like that. ISANG.
Thank you.
world, and then the base materials, I think is the best thing is having.
You will take the exam one? No. I'm sorry, what's your name?
Emma?
Sorry, it's not you. Yes, one student should here to take their exam, but
Today?
yeah,
Gabby.
yeah. Who is that?
She's on getting the
Gabby?
Maybe she was studying.
Gabby?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. After. Yeah, she's supposed to take exam.
So, yeah, so studying the